Hello there everybody, this is Krista and welcome back to the Krista Chronicles, and today we are doing a VR to a video very recently put out by Dawn Michelle called I want to say she called it something like the All Up in My Feels decks, something of that sort. Also, introductions are in order. This is my new friend. This is one of the Sunny Angel collectibles. I just discovered them, and I'm obsessed. And there's so many different kinds, however, I am very interested, clearly, in the vegetable line. So, this is Caleb the Caleb... Whoa. Caleb the Cabbage Angel. I don't know if they come with names, but that's what I've decided his name is. And so he will be over here today. And we love him. He's so cute. Oh my god, look at him. Anyway, All Up in My Feels decks, and I just loved this video so much that Dawn did. Basically, she went through and identified just the decks she's been using as of late to really kind of work through very specific emotions. Now, I feel like Dawn Michelle always mentions she has difficulty with this of like putting words to emotions, and I also very much struggle to do that. So I feel like this is a fun challenge in both of those ways. So we will see what comes out of my mouth, basically, when trying to put labels on these things, because I really did try. Obviously, I picked out a group of decks here that go with emotions that I have been working through lately, or just I have used them in the recent past to kind of match with certain emotions. And so this is not something I feel like I super consciously do, so it was really fun to sit down and be like, oh, I reached for this deck for this reason, like that's really cool. Alright, so let's just get into it. Enough babbling. Of course I will link Dawn's Michelle's video below if you haven't seen it. It was amazing. Alright, and so I definitely took inspiration. Some of the emotions that Dawn Michelle hit on, I was like, OMG, yes, me too. But some of these are just ones I'm going in my own direction. Because of course, you know, we don't feel the same emotions all the time. You know what I mean? Anyway, okay. So this first one, we are just right out the gate. We're just going in. I am calling this first emotion neurodivergent turmoil. And so I really don't have words to put to this so much, and that was kind of the best thing I came up with, but let's just get the deck out. The deck I use for, or I go to, anytime I'm feeling some kind of neurodivergent turmoil is the Adventure Time Tarot. And so, how do I want to explain this? When I say neurodivergent turmoil, I guess I could talk about it in the context of, like, lately, why I want to go to this deck. And for me, that's when I am experiencing meltdowns, which is something that has definitely been going on for me the past few weeks, just in a more extensive case, I guess you could say, or like more often. That's the words I'm looking for. If I am realizing that I read a situation wrong, like socially, or I'm having a feeling and I can't identify what the feeling is. Basically, any sort of discomfort that I can identify, at the very least, is related to my neurodivergence. This is the deck I go to for that every single time, without fail. And I know why. It's because with this Adventure Time Tarot, I talk about this all the time, how Adventure Time is a kind of comfort show for me. It's a safety zone for me. Special interest, if you will. And so I know this show inside and out, backwards, forwards. Everything you can know is stored in my brain. And so it adds this layer to the tarot of like, I can pull cards around it and have the situations and characters that come from that show to kind of guide me as well. And where I find it helpful in this is that when I am experiencing what I'm calling neurodivergent turmoil, a lot of things that I find difficult on a day-to-day get ramped up. So things like identifying my own emotions, being in touch with how I'm feeling, seeing things clear, like it just becomes really hard. And so if I were to take out any deck and pull cards and try to interpret them based on how I'm feeling, it wouldn't happen. I wouldn't be able to do it. Where with this deck, it almost feels like I don't have to look at it on this lens of an unknown or solely about myself where I'm already experiencing confusion. I can look at it through these characters, and it's something that I so naturally relate to. Even like while I'm watching the show, I find myself relating to these characters so much. And I find it so helpful, and I'm realizing I very easily could be making no sense right now. But this deck just brings me a lot of comfort in that way, where it just kind of gives me this lens to look through that isn't just myself and my own brain, where when I'm in this kind of feeling, or experience really, I should say, it's more, I guess this is a bit more of like an experience, I can find it really confusing to look at things through my own lens, and so this gives me an avenue to just not have to do that, and so love it for that. So that is the Adventure Time Tarot, and it goes with what I'm calling neurodivergent turmoil. I'm hoping hoping that makes any sort of sense, but if not, oh well. Okay. Now, an emotion that Dawn Michelle brought up that I just, oh my gosh, when she said it, I was like, yes! Oh my gosh, I didn't realize I used a deck in this way, and that is so spot on. And this is my deck for when I am feeling unapologetic, and I'm seeing this from the angle of like unapologetically me and myself through and through, and that for me is the Playful Heart Tarot. Something about this deck, again, this is something I feel like I've said before, it's just I haven't looked at it through this context and lens of like why I go to this deck, and it's because this feels like the inside of my brain. It feels like how I experience the world with all of these colors and a bit of childlikeness, and it's like using this deck, this is a really, really good example, this card right here, the Five of Swords, how it's showing this monster with two different, I see them as children. We have one that's kind of afraid and the other one who's facing it head on. And just right away when I saw this card for the first time, it was like, it made sense. Suddenly, like the Five of Swords just made so much sense to me of this kind of thing of like being in this scenario of someone kind of doing something not so nice, or perceiving something that's not so nice. And I think it's this interesting context of like, is the monster as big and scary as it really is? Sometimes yes and sometimes no. And I just think it gave it that interesting lens that right away I was like, yes. Anyway, we're getting off topic, aren't we? So I go to this deck when I am just in a total mood of like, I am the best. Like everything about me is so fantastic. Like the way I see the world and the way I experience the world is so amazing because it's uniquely me. And just feeling like it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about that. Like I'm happy in that, and that's what matters. And I go to this deck when I am feeling that way. And I think a lot of it has to relate to the childlike side of myself. Really, it's not even really a side, it is the whole. And this deck feels like it represents a bit of my journey to coming back from, I wouldn't say losing that, but feeling like I had to hide it at one point in my life. And so whenever I use this deck, it's like, it's a way to really get in touch with that and like it feels like a regrounding when I use this deck of like, ah yes, this is who I am, and I love that about me. And I don't care what anyone else thinks about it, you know? Like, that's what this deck feels like, just unapologetically me. So, that's the Playful Heart. Okay. Next up, this is a deck I use when I am feeling angsty, when I am full, like, teen angst mode of, like, I just want to do what I want to do. I don't want to have any responsibilities. I just want to have fun. Like, no one can tell me what to do. And I feel like that's the big part of this with my, like, feeling angsty. It really ties into this feeling I get of, like, no one can tell me what to do. Like, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do kind of thing. For me, that deck, interestingly enough, is the Cozy Witch Tarot. I think maybe it's the illustrations in this, but something about it just feels a little bit kind of teen angst to me, and it feels like it speaks to the inner teen in me. And I really, really like the key phrases on the bottom. I feel like when I'm in that kind of mood, I'm not doing a really full card read, full spread. I want a quick card to really tell me how it is, and this deck does that so well. And it's the illustration style and the kind of voice this deck has that just, I don't know, it really reminds me of a teenage version of myself. And there are some cards in particular that really feels like something that teenage me needed to hear of, like, okay, like, relax, it's not that bad. You know what I mean? But also some messages of, like, I don't know, kind of self-care and really self-prioritization. Because I think there's really something to be said for that angsty feeling of, like, no one can tell me what to do. I think when that inner teen part of me comes up, it's this dual thing of, alright, that needs to be kind of, like, put in its place just a little bit, but at the same time needs to be listened to, because, I don't know, I feel like a lot of us had that experience as teenagers of just kind of being written off and our emotions being written off as, like, oh, it's just their raging hormones, you know? But I think there's really something to be said about that feeling, and so it's like, on one hand, I need that message of, like, alright, cool it, but also, like, what can I learn from this? Why am I feeling this way? Am I feeling this way because I haven't kind of filled my own cup enough today, or maybe I'm overstimulated, or I haven't just done enough for me? And this deck kind of is able to come at it from both angles of, like, almost, it feels like guiding an inner teen angst part of me, and really comes through when I'm feeling that way. Of, like, someone who would, like, take you under their wing to both teach you, alright, we can't really act this way all the time, but let's still talk about the feeling behind it. So, whenever I'm feeling angsty, this is the deck that comes out. That's the Cozy Witch Tarot. Okay. So, the next deck I have to show is one that I've been using, especially as of late, when really the only word to describe it, and I know this is when Dawn Michelle did too, of just feeling hopeless in some way. For me, this has a lot to do with when I experience meltdowns. if you are someone who has experienced that as well, or like have witnessed them, it's a hard thing. It really is a hard thing, because you don't feel in control of yourself and the situation in that moment, and it just takes so much energy. And it's like when you come down from that, or I shouldn't say when I come down from that, it often brings on a feeling of just hopelessness. And I think that could also just be because I am still really, really learning about this and learning about myself in this way, that I feel like there's a bit of comparison to like a old sense of me. Anyway, the deck I like to use with this kind of like hopeless feeling is the Therapets Oracle. If you don't have this one, I just feel like this is one that everyone should have. Like, this is one that, I don't know, I'm so ready to gift just everyone I can who I know is having a hard time, and having, like, when I just feel like there is a feeling going on for someone of, like, this hopelessness, where it's that kind of, like, real deep-seated feeling where it almost makes it feel, like, hard to do things. Am I getting too... Oh my gosh, am I I don't know, maybe I'm oversharing. Whoa. Anyway, but I think where this comes in for me is because it's like, okay, I just have to draw one card. That's all that's going on here. I've got these big cards with these big bright colors, and the message is right on the card. I don't have to take out a book, because when I'm in that hopeless feeling, it's like, it's very easy to get in this space of like, what's the point? But there's always a point. There's always a point, I find, to pulling a card for myself when I'm really feeling any kind of way. There's always a point. And so when I'm feeling hopeless, often I don't want to pull a card. And sometimes that's valid. Sometimes not wanting to pull cards is valid, but most of the time when I'm feeling that way, this deck always helps. And pulling just one card from this deck helps, because again, it's like there's something about how big these cards are, how bright and colorful, and just the messages are so uplifting without being this sort of like sugary sweet kind of thing. It really hits on some big stuff, like you are worth taking care of. It hits in the right place in those moments, and really also helps me to feel what I'm feeling in those moments. Because especially with what I'm referring to here of kind of like a post-meltdown, the thing I want to do is just for it to be over. I just want it to be over and done with, and for it to be like the next day. But if I do that, I'm not working through the emotion. I'm not working through that, okay, why did this happen? How can I maybe stop this from happening again, or from maybe it won't be so bad the next time it does, you know? I'm not allowing for that to happen. And so taking the pause to use this deck when I'm feeling that way has just been really helpful. And again, like, whenever I sense that someone could be feeling that way, again, I don't want to like act like I know how people are feeling, but when I feel like that could be happening, I just feel like I just like sending this deck around, because I just think it's so good. I think it's so good. So that is the deck I like to use when I'm just feeling that kind of hopeless feeling. It's the Therapets. A great one. All right. This this next one is okay. So this is a deck that probably out of all of these, this is the one that like changes around. So this is the one that lately is just doing it for me in that way. And this emotion, the only thing that really has worked out in my head is when I'm just feeling smarty pants fancy. Because I think that's a mood, and it's a mood I get with, especially like with tarot, where I'm like, I just want to be so smart and so fancy, like I want to use something that makes me just look so freaking smart. I don't know, okay. So my deck right now for that is the Tarot of the Sevenfold Mystery by Robert M. Place. I'm obsessed with this right now, and like, you can't tell me that you don't see this deck and are like, oh my gosh, that is so fancy, and like, understanding it must mean you're so smart, and like, I don't. This is a new one to me, but I just love it. Something about it feels fancy and like esoteric. Like it came from, I feel like this is all of like Robert M. Place's decks. This is the only one I have. But what I've seen of his decks, it feels like it was like copied over from some ancient tome? Like the big book is what I mean, tome? Found in like a monastery or something. Like that's what I'm using here. Like you can't tell me. If you saw me using this out in public, just, I know. My feeling is that everyone would think I'm so smart. Like, oh my gosh, who's that smart, mysterious girl? Pulling those esoteric tarot cards. She must know the secrets of the universe. Like, that's what she's after. And listen, I think this is an emotion. I'm calling this an emotion, and it is smarty pants fancy. Maybe the right word is like when I'm just feeling a little pretentious. And I think we all feel a little pretentious sometimes, and I think that's okay. I think that's valid. Oh my gosh, my battery's gonna die. And feeling a little pretentious doesn't mean we have to be well prepared, clearly. Okay, you know what? I'm not editing this one. This is gonna be like any of them aren't, just uncut. Sometimes I'll cut like this stuff out though. Depends. Anyway, maybe that's really more the emotion, but pretentious just came to me just now. For some reason, that word was never going to come to me because all that was going through my head was smarty pants fancy. And that's a mood I really get in. And this is the one that's just been hitting that spot lately of like, okay, I want to be a smart girl. I want to be an educated, well-read, well-versed gal today. Oh my god, look at that owl though. So cute. Yeah, okay, so that's my one for that. That's my smarty pants fancy mood. Maybe that's more of a mood than an emotion, but I think it's an emotion. Whatever. Sevenfold Mystery. Okay. Two more to show. And I want to hear if any of you have decks you use for certain emotions. I am so curious. I have been thinking that Dawn Michelle put this video out like days ago, and I was gonna film a VR like literally that night, but I've just spent these days truly just thinking about this topic because I think it's so fun, so interesting. I can get this back in the box. We're gonna do that later. I don't know, something about this topic is just scratching my brain, so I want to know what you all use for certain things. Okay, next, the next deck is for when I am feeling lost and or small. And now this is actually a deck I did a deep dive series on my channel with, 4 times of feeling lost, and it is, surprise, surprise, the Forest of Enchantment. I think we can safely say this is like my favorite deck. I just think it's the best. Are we focused? Have we been focused? Oh my gosh, imagine. I changed the settings on my camera. Oh no! Is that focus? I think it is. Well, I think we'll find out. Anyway, I really find this deck hits in a spot for when I'm just having a feeling of just like, what am I doing? Where am I going? Really a thing of like, what's the point? Because that's a feeling I really can get sometimes of like, what's the point? And when I was thinking about this, I feel like that really comes from a place too of just feeling kind of small. Like a little bit like small, lost, insignificant almost. And I think when I'm having sort of like these high emotions, it's that kind of small feeling is something that I've really pinpointed lately. But I find this deck really feels like kind of a guiding back to myself, back to why I like doing whatever the heck I'm doing in the moment. I don't know, something about it just brings me back in touch with that. It feels like, because it is this like walking through the forest, and I find too that practice, I have a whole video series. I think I've got a playlist of it. I should. Hopefully. I'm pretty sure I made that. I will repeatedly do that when I'm feeling this kind of way, and this is always the deck I go to for that kind of lost feeling. So that is the Forest of Enchantment. Last but not least is the deck I use when I'm feeling sassy, and that's the 5-cent tarot. Because when I'm feeling sassy, it's a little bit of a mix of the kind of angst and unapologetic. If you put those two emotions together at the same time, that's where the sassy comes in. And so it's this thing of like, I'm just feeling myself basically, and no one can tell me anything otherwise. Like, I'm gonna do whatever I want, and that's that. And while that can be a productive emotion, sometimes I also need to be put in my place. And this deck really does that, because this is such a clear reader because it's got the keywords on it of upright and reversed. So I use this as a very straightforward, literal reader. Like, it's just about the only deck I have reversals shuffled into, because whatever keywords I get, that's the message. And so I use this a lot of the times for when I'm in that kind of sassy mood and I'm trying to make a decision of like, all right, is this something I should really get into right now, or maybe not? This really tells me like it is. And like I said, when I'm in that sassy mood, it's like sometimes, maybe it's like sassy, it could also be just like kind of bratty. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I'm gonna do what I want because I can. And sometimes I use this deck and it's like, yeah, you do what you want. You should do that. But it's very ready to be like, all right, let's take a chill pill. Let's think about that for a second. Maybe not. You know? This deck is so perfect for that. It's like exactly what I need with that kind of emotion. So that is my Feelin' Sassy deck, and it's the 5-cent tarot. And that, my friends, is all I got for you today. So again, I'd love to hear if you use any certain decks for certain emotions. Like I said, I will link Dawn Michelle's video down below. It was so awesome. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed. I hope this made some sort of sense. It was so fun. I love thinking about this. This is my favorite kind of thing to think about, like making connections. And this was a really helpful one. Loved it. So other than that, I hope you're having a great start to the week, and I'll see you again very soon.